What does Mark DeCasey, Anthony Rumble Johnson, Tyron Woodley, Roy Nelson, Conor McGregor, and One Punch Man all have in common?
Everybody's on steroids.
No, Nate. They all have one punch power. But why? Is it genetic?
Steroids.
No, stop that, Nate. I'm sure to an extent it's fair to assume that genetics do play a role as to why they hit so hard. But with some of their most devastating blows, they all also have one thing in common as well. And that is elastic recoil. So, what is elastic recoil? To understand, we must first understand why a basketball bounces when you drop it. The answer to that question is elasticity. Elasticity is the ability of a body to resist a distorting influence or deforming force and to return to its original size and shape when that influence or force is removed. So the basketball and the force it experiences colliding with the floor deforms it, and by returning to its original shape due to its elasticity, it exerts a force against that floor, causing it to bounce back up again. A contrary example of this would be a beanbag. A beanbag doesn't bounce because it deforms and stays deformed after it receives the force colliding with the floor. Now that we kind of understand this, how does this apply to all these fighters? It applies because muscles are actually elastic as well. And the elastic muscle they're primarily using is the pectoral muscle, the chest. Watch. Look at Tyron's overhand, and his elbow is essentially behind the shoulder, stretching the pectoral muscle. Let's look at this from another angle. Do you guys see this? How he shot his arm back first, stretching the pectoral muscle, thus successfully using recoil to accelerate the punch. Let's look at a few more examples of fighters doing this. Mark DeCasey, one-punching Timo Packalén. Do you see that? How he shot his arm back, stretching his pectoral muscle or chest muscle, then using the forced or recoil, hence elastic recoil, to further accelerate his overhand. Roy Nelson. That's a pretty huge range of motion, definitely using elastic recoil. Anthony Rumble Johnson. I'm sure in this instance you can see it without me freezing frame, how he's stretching his pectoral muscle, then using the elasticity of it to recoil his arm back. Here, Conor does it so subtly with such precise technique. Just appreciate how efficiently he harnesses elastic recoil for his KO on Aldo. That truly is a work of art. But of course, the man who trumps them all. Oh baby, look at that range of motion on sight, and no wonder he drops everyone with one punch. Am I right? I'll stop. So, the pro to this method of generating power is obviously more force, but its downside is the fact that it truly is more telegraphed. Instead of just firing the shot off your hip, you have more working pieces and more movements involved. Thus, naturally, of course, there is a greater likelihood of seeing the punch coming. To compensate for this, wrestlers excel with this technique through the overhand because they can mask the technique with a wrestling shoot. Conor in his instance compensated for the telegraph by using it in an instance his opponent could not back away from, using it as a counterpunch. And Mark DeCasey, his opponent was moving forward with a feint jab, and if you pair that with the sheer speed of execution, there was no real way of avoiding it. It is a punch that works best traditionally as an overhand. Can be used in hooks as well, although clean boxing technique would advise against that unless, of course, you know your opponent can't escape the moment it is used in. To maximize its likelihood of landing, exploiting a moment constructed by feints, a moment where they don't expect or can't escape the force, is how elastic recoil is best used. Such is the philosophy for any bigger and more telegraphed strikes. The bigger and longer it takes for the strike to land, the more dependent it is on a setup. Although, when done properly, it should be incomprehensibly fast regardless. It's also important to note that power comes from the ground up, and no amount of elastic recoil can compensate for proper hip movement and pivot. It's only when you combine and seamlessly orchestrate all of these elements from the balls of the feet up, the ground up, transitioning into the elastic recoil, do you have that devastating fist. Please use this knowledge wisely, my friends, for the arts are used for defense, discipline, and competition. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you did. It's good karma. And until next time, peace.